Galway Hooker, the Comedy Zone, Lake Norman, On the Nines, even now, Boatyard Eats. These are all restaurants and experiences that you can have here in the Lake Norman region. What do they all have in common? Well, I had the chance to speak with that one thing they have in common this week in Chris Boukedes. Chris Boukedes and his family came to the Lake Norman area long ago with visions and dreams to be business owners and give entertainment and culinary experiences to the people here in Lake Norman. He has been quite the influencer in the culture here. This week on Making Waves, you'll get a chance to hear our interview with Chris Boukedes, a guy who is lots of fun and has lots of energy to share around. We hope you enjoy this. We also hope that you'll take a moment and hit the subscribe button so that you can make sure to keep up with all the great new episodes and the folks that we're going to feature as we continue this series, Making Waves. Dude, it's all good. Like, I've never used Zoom until this. I mean, really, yeah. I used other things here and there randomly. I mean, we FaceTime. My dog, my little, year and a half year old loves to FaceTime like my parents.
Wait a minute, year and a half already?
Yeah, man.
How long ago was it when we first met?
Dude, it was
almost a year ago?
Yeah.
Because I remember you're at that newborn stage, getting through the sleep and all that.
Yep.
Wow, time flies, man.
It was about a year ago because we had the event at On the Nines.
Yep, absolutely. Wow, that feels like a lifetime ago, though, doesn't it?
Right? Yeah, absolutely. But so what I want to kind of do today, man, is we'll just chat. Like, I'll have you do a quick little intro of yourself. I mean, obviously, I think a lot of people in our market are going to know you and your companies, but just in case, a little intro of yourself, a little bit of background on where you are, and then we'll just kind of chat. And we don't have to stick exactly to those things I said.
You guide me. Yeah, you guide me. You ask the questions. I mean, I can talk until this Zoom breaks down. I mean, honestly, just I enjoy what we do.
Behind you.
What's that?
If you're not going to play that mandolin behind you?
Oh, that's not a mandolin. You know what that is? That's Gene Simmons from Kiss's guitar. I got it autographed by Gene Simmons.
What?
Yeah, it's cool as could be.
That's so cool, man.
I've got a couple of really cool guitars. I got the Kiss, the band, and then I got one with the Stones. That's pretty awesome. And then there's another one that's sitting right over here. It's Jimmy Buffett, and I'm a huge Buffett fan. And I think that stems from the fact of working the way I do, and the escape of what Buffett represents is kind of like the end goal,
Yeah, when it's time, when that time comes to be able to sit back on your island and just check out.
Absolutely. But when the guitars and the music, I have zero musical inclination. I love the arts, which you and I have talked about many a times. I just have zero artistic ability. I love to draw. I'm not a good artist. I love music. I can't play a damn instrument. I love good songs. I can't sing a song. I love great jokes. I can't tell them, right? All the art forms that are out there, I feel like I'm tied to them, but I just can't perform any of them.
But you know what, man? That's what's so cool about you and what you do and what you've done in this region with your companies, and what you've done is one of the things I'm going to bring up today is I consider you one of the Lake Norman cultural moguls.
No, I don't know about that word.
You're
a mogul can also be a speed bump.
Well, because you've built so many things from the ground up. They're like you said, you bring people together. You like to make people smile. You entertain people. You help artists. You encourage artists. I mean, these are things to where you may not think that you are an artist in yourself, but you can contribute to arts and culture without having to necessarily be the one that's the performer, right?
Yeah, touche. It takes all sides of it. You're right.
When in reality, culture is food, culture is entertainment, culture is laughing, culture is business, culture is what is culture. So that was the idea here, is how can we talk to cultural businesses and folks and influencers in the Lake Norman area and say, hey, how are you doing? What does the culture of Lake Norman mean to you? And in this time, how can people help to support you?
If everybody just does their little piece, that's what it boils down to, And for me, Lake Norman has become family. I'm a Charlotte boy, born and raised, moved up here, and to do our first restaurant in Lake Norman, I wasn't sure what we were going to get into. But here we are 20 years later, multiple restaurants later. I think the community is stronger than it ever has been. I watch every single day an email or a Facebook post or someone calling me directly that goes, hey, what can we do? And that's unheard of, right? Everybody knows they got to do their part. But I think maybe differently, everybody's looking at the restaurant industry like it's a massive disaster. And it has taken a direct hit. There's no question, right? These restaurants, what you see driving down Catawba Avenue won't be the same landscape in another year. There's going to be places that are going to fall off the radar, and that sucks. Those are hardworking families. The restaurant industry isn't built on huge capital and endless supplies of money. It's usually some mom and pop that has their life into it in most restaurants. And then with Lake Norman, how it's grown over the last decade, what used to be people like me, where it was mom and pop shops and maybe a sprinkle or two of the big restaurant chains, we're now a lot more of those restaurant chains and a lot more of those mom and pop shops. But the restaurant chains have taken big market share from the mom and pops, which has forced us to have to adapt, create, and be more savvy in our survival. And then now you add this virus, the big chains just basically shutter. They do what they can do and survive. And they've got money to keep the capital flowing at them for a certain period of time. Nobody has it endless, but those guys can survive longer. But the mom and pop shops, I'm talking that they work with 1 week of cash flow, sometimes at best in their accounts. And this is a month, 2 months, possibly 3 months of being out. I really don't care what the stimulus package does. It's going to only be a dent in what the long-term effects of this are going to be. So how do those people come back from it, right? I'm one of those people. I feel I'm a survivalist. I'm not afraid of any kind of change. I welcome change. I love a new day. I love being able to adapt and create and see what's next. But a lot of people are going to be they're going to be trapped behind that 8 ball. It's going to be hard to come out from under it. But as a community, to watch the people, step up, it's been crazy. I mean, I feel anybody, whether you're in banking, NASCAR, or whatever you do in Lake Norman, if you're not in the restaurant business, for some reason, it feels like everybody feels for the restaurant person, right? Because they know the hit that this has taken. Now, I've never seen anything like that before. It's been very heartwarming. It's been amazing. The support has been unwavering. I mean, it's unbelievable. So I'm just excited to be part of it, but I'm really excited to get through it to see how we make the new day happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's back up real quick.
Yeah.
So just in case people are watching and they aren't aware, help tell us a little bit about the restaurants that you work with, that you manage, that you own and operate here in the Lake Norman region.
Do you want me to talk about them through this virus?
Well, just first establish, like, what are they, right? Like,
okay.
what are the restaurants? Like, what's your mogul?
How about I give you a little 2-minute from the beginning? That's a quick rundown.
Perfect.
Okay. Born and raised Charlotte. Been in the business since I was 8 years old. About 20 years ago, actually, when I was 20 years old, I had my first restaurant called Clucker's Restaurant. And from there, I saw a need for special events and catering. And as Charlotte was growing, this was about 30 years ago, I saw something starting to evolve up. And the need for group gatherings, bigger events. It wasn't just your normal wedding at a hotel anymore. It was corporate getting involved. And so I started my company called Bouk Management, really to focus on catering and special events. And those special events quickly dominated the restaurant, more so than the day-to-day business, by, whether it be doing an event for NCNB Bank back in the day, and catering to somebody's wedding. All of those became the vision that I saw, right? And again, back to kind of art. My art was food and trying to create. And now that I'm starting down this tangent, Justin, be careful. I'm gonna go longer than 2 minutes because this is where my passion comes in on this.
That's good, man. That's what we want.
Okay. All right. So I started Bouk Management to be a food, beverage, and entertainment company while I had restaurants. And the goal was to open a bunch of restaurants that could be bases for these events. When you have a restaurant, you open your door to the general public, and customers that walk in could be anybody, right? It could be a blue collar guy that works on the construction line. It could also be the CEO of a bank like Hugh McCall. And they can walk in, be dressed the same, pay the same amount of money, and sit down at your table. The difference is they have their guard dropped. I could probably go and knock down the door of a local, construction office and get to somebody. I'm not going to be able to go knock down the door of the bank and get to the CEO, right? But when you feed them, you open your heart to their families, you treat them right, you give them good service, they become available to you. And I saw that at an early age. And so leveraging those relationships and talking to my customers and being open and honest and asking for business and seeing what opportunities were there really helped that part of the business take off. But it showed me that that's where I wanted to be. So using the restaurants to build the foundation for the event business. So doing that, we had an opportunity working with the Showmars group to come open up the Brickhouse Tavern up in Davidson.
Okay.
So that's what moved me from Charlotte up to Lake Norman. But before we had left Charlotte, the event business was really growing, and the little organization called the Carolina Panthers were my first clients.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the first event I did was when the Panthers were awarded the NFL team. And Jerry Richardson and his son Mark were two of my great customers at my little restaurant. So when they were awarded the opportunity to get the Panthers, I took it upon myself and I fed the entire organization. I think it was like 15 employees they had at the time. And I said, I want to feed you guys and do a congratulations. So I took it to their offices. I can't even remember, some small offices down in Pineville, and fed them. And after that, they provided me a handful of events that were pretty special, but it showed me that this is something we can do. And then, that restaurant stayed in business for a number of years. And then we ended up moving up to Lake Norman to do the Brick House. And the Brick House was an amazing experience with Showmars, and you probably know Nick, Port City, and the Brick House and everything. And Nick was an incredible partner there. And I just wanted to do more from the event business and not just be restaurants. And in that, the Galway Hooker became an opportunity. And John Bisson, who started the Galway Hooker, and it was his vision to build this incredible Irish pub from scratch over in Ireland and bring it here to the shores of Lake Norman. It takes a little bit of insanity, a little bit of madness, and a hell of a lot of passion to pull that off and not worry about it, right? And, he wasn't a restaurant guy. He was a pilot for US Air at the time. And he and I befriended each other, and he's a great guy, and we're still partners together today. But he afforded me the opportunity to dive into that business months after it opened to take it to the next level. He saw it always as an Irish pub. I saw it as a fabric of the community. That pub is so special. And, there was a second floor there with the idea of doing events, the courtyard, the streets to do the festivals. I just saw a lot of opportunity. And I'd already started talking with the Comedy Zone down in Charlotte, because back to the arts, I've always been a fan of comedy. Can't tell a joke to save my life, but I wanted to do a comedy club up in Lake Norman. Yep. So once the Hooker came to play, that upstairs room at the Galway posed perfectly to be an opportunity for a Comedy Zone. So, talking to a guy by the name of Brian Heffron, Hef, and Hef owns Heffron Talent. He owns the brand of all the Comedy Zones. He and I have been lifelong friends. I brought him up to say, hey, look at the Galway Hooker as a potential comedy zone. And he came up, we broke a Miller Lite open, and we drank a beer, and we said, we'll be in business together for life. And the Comedy Zone was formed, 18 years ago or something like that, up at Lake Norman, right when the Hooker opened. And since then, we've opened a couple of more big clubs together, and the Comedy Zone in Lake Norman is home now. I mean, it's amazing what it's turned into. But those type of things with the Galway have opened up other opportunities, right? So the event business has picked up drastically in Lake Norman due to NASCAR and the growth in the community. Comedy has been incredible at Lake Norman with Comedy Zone at the Hooker, but that world has collided, comedy and events, because now I think it's weekly that I'm doing an event, whether it be for one of the NASCAR teams or a bank or one of these corporate, where they're leveraging my comedy club and we're booking entertainment for these events. So it's no longer just having the charity fundraiser and, the 10 auction items and the casino table. It's now, hey, we're bringing in national known comedians. They're doing these shows. They're playing MCs. So it adds that additional element of, entertainment and arts to these events.
Yeah.
So taking the Galway and that philosophy, we wanted to expand more. And now I know this hadn't done with Cornelius, but we also opened On the Nines after that up in Mooresville. And that has been an incredible collaboration with the town of Mooresville. And Mayor Miles Atkins has been just an amazing resource for us and helped us put together an incredible restaurant. Justin, you've been there. It's a special place, but it was not just about the restaurant. I saw that same thing I saw at the Galway Hooker, a big banquet room that we can do tons of events. The partnership with the Charles Mack Citizen Center, which has a performing arts center, the new performing arts theater they have, bringing comedy to Mooresville, doing a lot of those type of things was the bigger picture. Being on the golf course with On the Nines, doing golf tournaments, charitable events. I mean, I think the first year we opened the Nines, I think we did about 30 some odd charity events in the back room that raised over $1 million. Wow. That's kind of crazy out of a little restaurant in Mooresville, right? And so continuing the process of restaurants and entertainment, the last thing we just did, and I guess timing is everything in business. If you are to be a savvy business person, it's probably not smart to buy a large scale music venue 1 week before a global pandemic. But it's what it is. We ended up early this year in January, early February, purchasing Boatyard Eats.
Now, I wondered about that.
Yeah, and listen, the Stockwells are amazing. They're great people, great family, and they've become like my family. Joe to me has a big father figure to me because I've lost my parents early on, and so I've just taken a real liking to him. And Dave's great. The family's great. Everybody I've met, but the reason I liked what Boatyard was the same thing I did with the Galway and how it felt right for comedy, and I knew that we could grow comedy and add a new element to Lake Norman that was outside of just going for beers and drinks and food, something to do in Lake Norman. I felt the need for music was the same thing. And before they bought that corner, I was looking for locations to do something like in Asheville, like the Orange Peel or the music farm down in Charleston. I think Cornelius is prime, not just for Lake Norman, it was prime for it. There were some places, that are doing live music. Even the Hooker would do live music, but not a music venue.
Right.
So when they built Boatyard, I went there the day it opened, and I went, wow, they did it. This is what I wanted. And I was like, okay, great. Well, they were open for 6-7 months. I became a great customer of it. I love live music. They were doing even a little comedy in there through us, which is kind of cool. So I got to know the family. And just in conversations with the Stockwells, it became, hey, we're interested in partnering. We know what we built, but being able to operate it, and they needed a good operator. It's kind of the same scenario that, John had with the Galway Hooker. It fits my wheelhouse. So we were 2 weeks into the business of taking over to where we're ramping up, scheduling incredible bands, and leading right up to around that 1st of March. And you hear about this little fish that got all messed up in Wuhan, and, it's going to affect a whole bunch of things. And we just kept chugging along. And next, here comes the Galway Hooker St. Patty's Day Festival. I've got, 2 national bands at Boatyard Eats. It was going to be the culmination of the biggest weekend of events that we've ever done. It was going to be massive. And we had committed a ton of capital, a ton of investment to it. The marketing was there, everything. And needless to say, 8 hours before the thing kicked off, we had to shut the entire thing down. Rightfully so. It was the right thing to do, right? The last thing I wanted to do was have an event with 5,000 people and something spread from there. And instead of me sitting there talking to you, I'm sitting there talking to Savannah Guthrie on the Today Show as the Corona kid. I don't want to be that person.
The Corona kid.
So I want to sell Corona. I don't want to spread Corona. That was my goal. So the Boatyard deal, still, I have a huge passion for it. The challenge is going to be sustaining what's coming. Your friends, when the president gives us an all clear and we feel safe, we'll migrate back out to restaurants. We may not go into packed houses with 2-hour wait, but we'll congregate with our family and we'll be out.
So 2 questions I want to ask first. First one, kind of help me understand, and you talked about this a little bit, but just
Okay?
for the sake of I'm trying to keep the show some of the same questions to people. So
I will leave you on a tangent all day long. I'm sorry.
oh, don't apologize, man. What do you consider culture? When you hear culture, what do you consider culture? What makes up culture?
So, culture from the art world, it's a little combination of, where you come from, what you were instilled in, and then what you like if you have been allowed to have your own thoughts, to be able to have your own person. And my 15-year-old, my 12-year-old, probably to a fault, I've allowed them to freely think and be who they want to be. Yeah, that's a fair way to say it.
So then my kind of second part of that question is, and this will be great to hear you say, because I think you, like, as I mentioned, you've done so much, you've been here so long to influence this, but obviously, so I've lived here almost 3 years now, right? But I am from North Carolina originally, so I've been able to see, but you being from Charlotte for a long time before you moved here as well, you've seen this area. So what we think of as the Lake Norman area for our business is South Iredell, East Lincoln, West Cabarrus, and obviously North Mecklenburg, right? And all those towns that make up this, what we call the Lake Norman region.
Right.
So what's happened is Lake Norman region is blown up to your extent, you said earlier, right? There was nothing and now there's so much more here. What do you think is becoming the culture of Lake Norman?
Let me think through that one a little more. Let's dig in a little bit more into other stuff. Because for me, as a restaurateur guy who builds and lives in the food and beverage and entertainment world, the culture.
Because you're part of, you're.
Oh yeah, and I want to answer it because
I'm part of that culture, right? In a good way. Like, when my wife and I moved here, we've patronized lots of your businesses and other businesses there's some really great restaurants in the Lake Norman region. Some of them are yours. Some of them are other restaurateurs and have been great restaurants. I think there's, and up to Mooresville area and down to Cornelius and Huntersville as well. There's all great restaurants in this area, which is part of the cool culture. And I think that's what started to develop in a good way. And now these entertainment side of things, to which you said, from what you do with Comedy Zone there, and then with also with Boatyard and what that's doing, add that also to what Case and Jess are doing over in downtown area, what's up in Mooresville and the downtown Mooresville area and others.
Do you think that's just a human intellect? Do you think that the culture of the community, because you've gotten a higher level of, money entering, right? People that are more professional, that before it was, Farmer Joe and he had 15 acres of land and that was it. And he never went outside of that farm except to go pick up some things to do his farming. Yeah. Then Duke Energy builds these lots, and all of a sudden that first generation of those lots were, hey, those are people who want to just be on the water. They weren't looking at it from an investment standpoint. Sure. Then the money starts showing up, and when you can pay $1 million for a quarter acre piece of land, you are not ignorant, you're not dumb, you have a lot of money, you know what you're doing. Those people aren't going to buy that land or that property without a culture to be part of, right? So I think those dollars then started getting involved. People came in buying up nice properties. People like John Bisson, who were U.S. air pilots who wanted to live on the water but wanted to be part of the community, to fly back and forth to Ireland 20-something times to build your pub on the property. Hell, you talk about the culture of this. I give John probably some of the biggest credit in Lake Norman for culture. He brought an Irish culture to the town that nobody ever dreamed of. Who does that, right? You got to be insane. But he did that. Now to the Stockwells, to do what they did and bring a large-scale music venue, to bring the culture of the arts here, to see what you're doing, to have a full arts center. The culture of this community is finally forward-thinking. I think it's intellect. I think we've added a different level of thinking, smart business people, and people wanting to have a sense of community. It used to be you live in Lake Norman and you drive to Charlotte for work. You go out in Charlotte. Then it turned into, hey, I'm making great money. I live in Charlotte. I have my weekend home up in Lake Norman to go get away. Now you have big corporations going, hey, a lot of my people live in Lake Norman. I want to have my offices up there. I want to be part of that community. And from the entertainment standpoint, it's a lot like Atlanta. If you remember Atlanta it used to be downtown Atlanta was the place to be, and everybody wanted to be in downtown. If you go from out of town, you stay downtown and you go out downtown. That's how Charlotte was about 15, 20 years ago. And then Atlanta kind of broke apart and it became these little pockets of culture all over the city. And if you look at Charlotte now, we're one of those pockets in Lake Norman. You have Montford, you have Noda, Plaza Midwood, South End, and downtown, it's struggling, right? If you work downtown, that's what you do. And then you get the heck out as fast as you can and you go to your pocket. And each of those pockets have their own culture. So Noda is, a little bit more of a hipster, young millennial. Lake Norman is, the culture is, I think, is more family based. I think it's professional, and they are hungry for something to do up here. And it's not about just another bar or another restaurant. I think it's entertainment, it's arts, it's the studios. It's going to have a different kind of vibe in the next 10 years once we get out of what we're going through right now. You'll see people thinking creatively. You'll see a lot more arts come into play. I mean, for God's sakes, I'm talking to the town on Monday about painting the entire side of Boatyard Eats with a mural from an artist that we have in Charlotte to make that the welcome board into Cornelius.
Love that. That's
right.
Awesome.
But that's a different kind of thinking, right? Because before it wouldn't have been anything like that. It wouldn't have been, anything thinking outside the cultural arts. That's what you guys have done. You've really turned that into something on the tip of everybody's tongue now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love that answer, like the way you just described that and the timeline, kind of how you almost described, like it used to be people would, live in Charlotte or work in Charlotte and then come up to their weekend lake house. And now it's like everyone lives up here and maybe we'll go into Charlotte on the weekend, maybe.
I've got a good friend of mine who works for one of the big banks. He's a finance director. He's one of those hedge guys and has a lake house, has a house in Charlotte. And he comes up here every Friday. He leaves work about noon, comes to the Hooker on Friday nights, goes to the Nines on Saturday nights, goes back home on Sundays, and he works in Ballantyne at his offices. He literally, I think January 1st, sold his house, closed down his office down there, moved up to the lake permanently, and he got himself a little office, and he moved his entire team up this way. And he's like, I don't need to go to Charlotte ever again.
That's awesome.
And you're hearing a lot of that.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, hey, we're not talking bad on Charlotte, like.
Oh, not at all. I'm a Charlotte boy, but it's what it is.
Yeah. But you're right. It's just interesting. So, that's so cool to hear you say that, because again, it's someone who's seen so much of this happen and been so influential.
It's what I did. I didn't want, we have some business in Charlotte, but I got out of the Charlotte stuff, came up to the lake, and we ended up going back to Charlotte with businesses. But it was after we were locked in up here to be part of this, because what it represented was family, a little slower pace, a little bit safer. And maybe that's the culture, right? Maybe that's it. Maybe it's a little tight-knit community that you can maneuver within. You're not struggling to keep up with everything, and just kind of at a little lake pace. There's something about water that just slows the blood flow down.
Lake time.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I'm not a big water baby. We live on the lake. I don't get to enjoy it nearly as much. But waking up, grabbing a cup of coffee, and sitting on that deck for 10 minutes reduces the blood pressure 50%. And then I can get back to it.
Yeah. That's great, man. Well, awesome, dude. This has been awesome.
I feel like I scrambled around that last answer, though. I feel like I just didn't give you a clear answer on the culture.
There's no clear answer. It's meant to be something to be thought about and discussed and discovered. Like that's kind of the goal of what we're wanting to do here, is discover also what is this new culture that because our organization wants to be one of the ones that is trying to help with that. So what is that new culture that's being developed, to your point, like, and how are we all building it together, and letting people know that all of them are just as important. Everyone here is just as important to build the culture as anyone else is, right?
Yeah, and you are correct. And when you say it like that, it really does simplify it to one word. It is the arts. If I look at myself, it's my partner in these businesses is Chef Steve Jordan. He's an artist. He's an absolute artist.
Chefs are absolute artists.
And Steve, to me, is one of the best. He came out of Johnson & Wales in Charleston. He is an artist. If you've ever eaten his food, anybody who hears this will say, yep, Steve's the best there is. He's an artist. I look at the Comedy Zone and those guys that get on that stage and those bright lights hit, they're artists.
Yep.
To be able to sit in front of an audience of 150 people and make them laugh for an hour, if that's not art, nothing is. And the great part is it's the last true version of the spoken word, right? I mean, it's the freedom of speech. There it is. And I love the comedians who get a little risky.
Yeah.
And I love the customers who go, oh, that was offensive to me. That's the purpose of the freedom of speech.
Yeah, if it offended you, maybe that means you need to think on it.
Absolutely. And then I look at Boatyard with the live music, that's art. So if you really sum up what I want to be, I think maybe it is the culture of what my company is. It is food, beverage, entertainment under the arts umbrella. I mean, in all essence, that's what we are. I mean, at every turn, what I'm trying to do. So maybe that's more of the answer. Maybe that's what Bouk Management really is.
So then real quickly, then tell us, what can people do right now that love you, that love your staff, that love your companies? How can they help you guys right now?
The Hooker is doing curbside service along the lines with every other restaurant. Any restaurant that is doing curbside, it really is nothing more than just to sustain a couple of employees. You're not really making any great money. And you can see that in the impact of Chick-fil-A. I mean, Chick-fil-A has only increased their business probably 30% by this. There's 3 lines around the building now at each Chick-fil-A because it's about convenience, right? People want to just get home to their families. So we are offering curbside. That's one great thing. Everybody's offering gift card sales. The Nines is trying to do an Easter, family meal, which has been great. All those things are important, but it's not fair to push this towards my businesses. All of us in the restaurant, food and beverage are struggling. We're struggling to see what tomorrow is going to be because our business is already hard enough as it is. To not have tomorrow in sight, to know what to do, to know how to attack, to have all these incredible employees sitting in the shadows looking at you, waiting, going, hey, when do we get to turn this on? It's different if an employee leaves or someone gets fired and they go to the next service job. But these guys are just sitting, waiting, and we can't give them any guidance. And I hate that part. I hate that. So to answer the question, what we can do, there's not much until we start to get clarity other than stay connected, right? Keep up with the social media. And when the time comes, support the local businesses. Don't go to these chains, support the locals. And I think this community more so than most is going to do that, just based on what I hear, just based on what I'm seeing. I mean, when I get random phone calls, I'm talking daily, maybe 5 to 6 from a customer that I have to go into my Rolodex and go, oh yeah. And they're so kind and the comments are always the same. How are you holding up? How's the gang doing? How's the team doing? Man, we made an impact, right? You've impacted people that way. And I just can't wait to get back to the business to say thank you to the community and just get back to work, right? It's going to be a new day. It's going to be hard as hell, but we're going to survive. This ain't the first time the world's changed.
Right. That's right. Right, man.
It's a survivalist mentality.
Yeah.
I'm a survivor. I don't hit home runs. I don't try to extend the game and try to show off. I want to be Derek Jeter. I want to hit good, consistent singles. I want to stay healthy. I want to stay out of the noise. And I want to just play ball. I want to do what I love to do for my career. And at the end of that, I want people to go, you did it the right way. That's really all I want it to be.
Yeah, man. Well, I think I'll I speak for myself and lots of others I think we're excited for you to be able to get back to doing that, and all your businesses and all your teams being able to get back out there and do that. I think everyone's really looking forward to getting back to a normal. What that normal is, we'll wait and see.
Listen, we were about to have 7,000 people. 12 hours later, that's this entire community's biggest event on St. Paddy's Day. And I literally had to take that away from them just hours before. They were all in their green. They were dyeing their hair. They had their Uber rides ready to go. And I had to take a pretty good lashing on that one.
Like to your point earlier, maybe way back when they were all farms, and it was much like, let's just stick to ourselves. And so maybe the towns had a little bit more of a singular mentality. Whereas now I really feel like it's a region as a whole. I mean, yes, like, so my wife and I, you know, our family, we just moved to Huntersville, right? So we live in Huntersville, but I still work in Cornelius, and I still go to Mooresville at least once or twice a week, and I still go to Davidson. I mean, right? I mean, it's all just a big, great lake area.
Lake Norman is the region. There's no question, right? And if you're from Charlotte, when you think of Lake Norman, they don't think Huntersville, Cornelius, Davidson, or Mooresville. It's just Lake Norman. They don't even realize 25 to 28 to 30. They don't understand that. So Lake Norman as a whole, and you'll be able to leverage all that. I mean, all those towns, while they have their own interests, it's still about the common good.
That's exactly right, man. That's exactly right. Well, all right. Hey, thanks a lot, Chris. Really good to catch up with you, man.
Yeah, and listen, when you want to bring the family, you want to come by, pick up curbside at the Hooker, let me treat you to dinner.
Yeah, you don't have to treat me. We're going to do it anyways. We want to support you, man.
Come on by. It's good food.
So, all right. Thanks, buddy. Hey, we'll talk to you soon, all right?
See you soon.